Hey everyone, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard the Lighthouse Within with Ambar Paloma, but you can also call me Amber. I am so excited because today's topic is inspired by one of my favorite life pivots ever. On December 30th, I celebrated my 6-year anniversary of moving abroad. So in honor of that day, I posted a thread sharing 6 unforgettable moments living abroad that altered my brain chemistry. And it ended up going somewhat viral, y'all. It got about 70,000 views and I gained tons of new followers. One of them suggested I turn the post into a podcast episode. And I actually thought that post was filled with such great lessons on resilience that you should carry with you throughout this year. So I loved the idea, and I thought it was the perfect way to kick off this year and the next series of my podcast. This episode is about to be filled with tons of my personal stories, which I know from your comments are your favorite part of my episodes. I hope this episode speaks to you, and if it does, please leave me a comment, send a DM, or leave me a rating. I love hearing feedback from you. It's absolutely my favorite part. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. So without further ado, let's get started. I actually had super big plans for my holiday break. Am I alone in this? Did anybody else have ridiculously big goals for their holiday break? I was like, I'm going to batch social media content. I'm going to record so many episodes. I'm going to update my freebie. And then I ended up getting ridiculously sick. I was glued to my bed, sweating with a fever for days. I still cannot smell a thing. Don't you just love it when you make a perfect plan and then life is like, LOL, that's cute, and just shreds your plan apart? Well, my friends, that's what this show is all about. If this is your first time at the Lighthouse Within, I am so happy you decided to join me. We are on the ultimate voyage to resilience, aka we're learning how to navigate changes in life, so next time life tries you and your perfect little plan, you can get back on track with your joy and your light intact. Also, Happy New Year, friends. I don't know what anyone has told you, but the new year only officially started last Monday. And yes, you can quote me on that. Whoever said it started on January 1st is lying to you. I am the source of truth on this. January 1st through 5th was a trial period. The year only officially started last week, making this the second week of the year. You are welcome. So as I shared, on December 30th, I had a really important anniversary. I cannot believe it. I have been living abroad for 6 years, y'all. I shared the story that led to my epic move abroad in the 5th episode, and it is honestly one of my favorite stories ever. So go back and check it out if you haven't, because it's also my favorite episode. But in case you haven't heard it, I'm going to give you the quick version just so you have some context for what I am about to say. In 2017, I moved to Atlanta with my then boyfriend, and by 2018, I found myself in the middle of a full-blown quarter-life crisis. Everything was going wrong, y'all, and I do mean everything. I had no friends, my job was super toxic, my car kept breaking down, my allergies were so bad in that city I lost my voice multiple times from how constricted my throat got, and to make matters worse, the guy I moved to Atlanta to be with had cheated on me and then left the city. I would come home every day and cry. That year sucked. But in the middle of my quarter-life crisis, I got assigned to sell everything to my name, quit my toxic job, and move abroad. So on December 30th, 2018, I boarded a plane to Spain for what was supposed to be a 6-month adventure. But 6 years and 2 countries later, I recently celebrated 6 years living abroad. Woo! In honor of my anniversary, here are 6 unforgettable moments living abroad that altered my brain chemistry. This first story was a hit, and I am calling it, Do You Not Have 5 Minutes to Drink a Coffee? Y'all, when I first moved to Spain, I moved as an English teacher through this program called the North American Culture and Language Assistance. It's not just for North Americans. Anyone from a native English-speaking country can apply for free, and then they place you in a public school to teach English for about 12 hours a week, Monday through Thursday. I highly recommend this because those 12 hours a week paid me enough to pay my rent, phone bill, groceries, and travel around Spain. Y'all, I was living my best little life. Anyways, I got accepted to this program, and the government of Spain sent me to this place called Almeria, Spain. Amber, where on earth is Almeria, Spain? Y'all, this place is so uncommunicated that even when I told Spanish people that I had lived there for 6 months, they were like, why? Like, no one goes to Almeria. And they were not kidding. I have so many stories about this place, like how there were so few foreigners. People would stare at me so hard they'd walk into me. Do you know how hard you have to be staring at someone to just absentmindedly walk into them? Anyways, needless to say, this place was like traditional. One day at work, I was feeling really tired. So I worked as an assistant in the classroom. So I mentioned to the head teacher that I was going to go grab a quick coffee. And she was like, oh, I'll go with you. Because Spanish people don't understand like eating by yourself. They're like, why wouldn't you want company? So we walk into the cafe and I go straight up to the bar and she goes straight to sit down. And we both look at each other like, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I was just going to take it to go. And she was like, to go? Do you not have 5 minutes to drink a coffee? Ooh! Honestly, I felt like as an American, she was coming for my whole life because I was totally just going to chug this coffee for energy while I walked so I could keep working. Then she says to me, certainly you have 5 minutes to sit and enjoy your coffee. Sit and enjoy! What a novel idea! And I explained to her that it's not common for us to sit and enjoy a coffee while we're on the clock because we have things to get done. And I'll never forget. She was like, oh yeah, I think I've seen this in the movies. Which is so like, oh, in the movies, like some like foreign concept. But she was talking about my life. Then she goes, oh yeah, I've seen this in the movies. Some man walking through New York City on the phone while he's having a meeting, drinking his coffee and walking to work. She was like, yeah, we don't do that here. On a separate occasion, I actually tried to get a coffee to go at that same cafe. And the man was like, I don't have to-go cups. How am I supposed to give it to you to go? So yeah, I got really into the habit of sitting down for my coffee. But it wasn't just coffee. It was like all meals. They have really structured meal times. So it's really odd for you to be eating between meal times because the idea is you should have paused at the last meal time. So if you're eating in between, people will literally be like, did you not have breakfast? Did you not have lunch? Which is insane if you've missed lunch because they literally shut down the whole country for 2 hours just so you can sit, have lunch, and go meet up with your friends, coworkers, or family members. So if you're hungry between lunchtime and dinner time, they were like, what were you doing? The whole country shut down. And it was funny to me as an American to think like, oh, the whole country is eating at the same time because then who is working? I know, y'all, we as Americans are addicted to work. On a separate occasion, I remember a man eating a sandwich while he walked. And it was so hilarious to me because my friend was in the car and she's looking out the window watching this man eat a sandwich as he walked. And she was like, oh, poor thing. And I was like, what happened? She was like, oh, poor thing. What a miserable life he must live. He doesn't even have time to sit down and eat a sandwich. Y'all, I'm trying not to laugh because that is actually kind of sad. But as an American, I'm like, we will be in the car, having a phone call, doing our makeup, eating breakfast, and driving to work. Y'all, so this year, I want you to take a page from the Spanish. Even if you are having a super busy season, you are super stressed, you have overcommitted yourself into more tasks than you can complete, I need you to promise yourself to pause for your coffee and lunch breaks and just enjoy your food and give yourself that moment to relax and unwind because certainly you have 5 minutes to drink a coffee. I'm calling this next story, don't worry, this is not the United States. We're not going to come looking for you. In my second year as an English teacher in Spain, I had the strangest experience to work for the strictest Spanish person I have ever met to this day. She was so by the book, y'all. One day she tells me, if you're not able to get an appointment to renew your resident card by January 1st, I'm going to have to send you back to the United States, which, as a daughter of immigrants to the United States of America, sent literal shivers down my spine. Now, the problem was there were no appointments. So you were supposed to get an appointment to renew your card in the city that you lived in. But I searched and searched and searched and I couldn't find any. Now, I had heard from a friend of a friend of a friend that they were able to get away with making an appointment at a nearby office instead. Now, I knew that this was technically against the rules, but the first thing you need to know about Spain is the law depends on who you ask. So I took a chance, y'all, and I made my appointment in that same nearby town. I took all my paperwork, stood in line, and when it was finally my turn, I presented my paperwork to the police officer like I was supposed to be there. Because if you're going to do something wrong, my friends, do it with confidence so they doubt themselves and not you. But this man took one look at my paperwork and said, sorry, I can't accept this. You're supposed to do this in the city that you live in. But there are no appointments, I said. He's like, well, you're just going to have to keep looking. And at this point, I am in tears, y'all. I just spontaneously erupted into what sounded like yelps. And I was like, but my boss said if I don't have my card by January 1st, she's gonna send me back to my country. And at this point, this man is actively trying to console me because I was in hysterics. He was like, shh, calm down. People are starting to look at us. They're going to think I did something wrong to you. Meanwhile, I'm just like full-blown tears. I was a damsel in distress. And this man was a man of the law trying to console me. He put his arm around me and patted my shoulder, saying, there. I'll never forget what he said next because he said, don't worry. This is not the United States. We're not going to come looking for you. And he was like, look, why don't you go take a walk on the beach, calm down, have some sangria, and just try again later. And if you don't get an appointment by the date, then you don't get an appointment by the date. What are you supposed to do? There weren't any appointments. Then there weren't any appointments. I just remember I was so upset, y'all. I was so upset. I had no room in my heart that day for this no pasa nada, que será Spanish attitude. But I decided to take this man's advice. I walked along the beach. I stopped and had some sangria. I went home and I opened my computer and I tried again. And won't you believe it? There was an appointment. So mark my words, my friend, something will go wrong for you this year. And I'm not wishing this on you, okay? This is just a fact of life. There will be a point in this year where you will find yourself in a situation that looks bleak. It looks like this is just not going to work out. You are so sure you are about to get deported by your strict Spanish boss back to the United States level bleak. And I want you to remember to go take a walk, have some sangria, and try again. No, okay, but real talk. Sometimes we really just have to take a step back from the thing causing our worry, find a way to recollect ourselves and trust the process. And I hope when you inevitably find yourself in a moment this year when you're not sure how something will work out for you, that you remember my funny story with the police officer in Spain. The third story, y'all. I would not recommend this, but it was also one of the most definitive experiences of my entire time living abroad, and probably of my whole life. So after my first 6 months teaching abroad, I was not ready to go back to the United States, and I decided to reapply for another full year of teaching. But obviously the school closes for the summer, so I had applied to this thing called VIP Kid to teach English online to kids in China. And my big plan was to go on this epic trip with my friend to Romania and Croatia, and then go back to visit my family for the summer in Miami while teaching English online to these kids in China. But a few days before my big trip to Romania and Croatia, my computer completely died. So there I was with a 1-month trip coming up that was about to drain what was left of my money, and I had no job. And I knew in my heart of hearts that if I went back to the United States under these conditions, that I would not be able to come back to Spain in the fall for the school year. And nothing about going back to the United States sounded like fun. So I was like, what is the fastest way I can think of to secure food, housing, and money until the school year starts? I'm going to become an au pair. If you don't know what an au pair is, basically you agree to live with a family and teach their children your native language. Depending on the family, you can be in charge of as little as just kind of babysitting the kids, like being a sort of big sister figure while teaching them a language for 30 hours a week. Or it can go as intense as you having to like cook and clean as well. In exchange for this, they give you food, housing, and a weekly stipend. It's not much, y'all. I think I made something like 100 euros a week. And I'm just going to say I am so lucky that the family I lived with was amazing. Because imagine being on something like Tinder and just having a few conversations and then being like, okay, yeah, I'll totally come live with you for several months and teach you English. And I really did not ask enough questions because I ended up living in the middle of nowhere. So we actually lived in 2 places. The first one was a small town in the area of Murcia called Alchena. And we lived there for a few weeks. And then we went to this tiny village. I mean tiny. In the mountains of Galicia called Balteiro, where there was no cell reception, no Wi-Fi, no one my age, and something like 10 houses, half of which belonged to the family members. There was all of one bar/restaurant called La Carrasca, where the elderly men would go and play dominoes, and me and my host dad would sometimes go there and drink a Coke 00 because my host dad was a diabetic, and we would watch them play, and that was our great source of fun. It was rough. And if you walked for an entire hour, you would get to the next biggest village, which had a whopping population of 1,000 people. It was insane. I remember I told my host dad one day that I was feeling stir crazy, and he was like, see, what is stir crazy? No, but real talk, this was such a special experience because it was the most intimate experience I had ever had with Spanish culture. Because there was no other entertainment, I spent all day talking and playing with the family. I still remember my host abuela's paella recipe. I still remember the Spanish board games I played with the cousins that were in from out of town. I still remember the lake where my host dad taught me how to kayak surrounded by vineyards where they produced some of the most famous Spanish wines. I still remember sitting in the back seat with my little host sisters playing Veo Veo, the Spanish version of I Spy with my little eye. My Spanish grew immensely, sitting and talking about everything from books to politics to childhood games. I got to participate in village holidays as part of a local family, and I taught them about American traditions too. I spent my summer playing Humans vs. Zombies, making s'mores, and teaching my little girls songs like The Wheels on the Bus and hand games like Miss Mary Mac and Rockin' Robin. 5 years later, I still visit them every year and connect with them on holidays and birthdays. In a way, this is really what resilience is about for me. The ability to turn lemons into lemonade. I had this plan and it was so good. And then it just got pulled out from underneath me. And this is another common scenario that we will find ourselves in at some point. These are pivotal moments because they always ask us what really matters to you. What is your priority? Mark my words, you will also find yourself in a situation this year that will ask you these very questions. I could have gone back to the United States because I still had the plane ticket. And I could have been in that pivotal moment and said, well, my priority is making money. So I could have gone back and done that. And I promise you, I would not be on this podcast today. But I made another choice, that no amount of money mattered to me more than staying in Spain. And I needed to figure out how to make it happen. The other thing about this story is that I did not at all plan to spend my summer this way, but it ended up being one of the most treasured experiences of my life that changed me in deep ways. So when your plan A for something this year inevitably does not work out, I want you to be open to the magic of your plan B. My fourth story It's more about my time as an English teacher. So in my second year as an English teacher, I had this student who refused to speak English. He told me he was too shy. I remember I encouraged him and told him I was there to help him. Like, that's what I'm here for, bro. And that the worst thing that could possibly happen is that he would say something incorrectly and I would teach him the right way to say it. And I think telling him that reassured him because I did work in a secondary school. My students were between 11 to 16 years, which is a very, very self-conscious stage of life. But I think a lot of us, regardless of age, can also relate to that fear of putting ourselves out there until we feel like we're good enough to do so. But the gag is that the only way to reach good enough is to put yourself out there. Maybe that's putting out those not so great videos on Instagram. Maybe that's speaking up in language class before you feel totally confident. Or maybe that's putting yourself out there on a dating app, even when you're feeling insecure. But in case you are worried about putting yourself out there before you feel fully ready and feeling like a fool, I would like to report that this story has a very happy ending. Because after several months, he came to class and told me all about his weekend in English. And he was so excited. I still remember the smile on his face. This is proof that facing your fears and making small efforts does create big change. After living in Spain for 3 years, I was ready to put a ring on it. I was pretty sure this is my place. I thought Spain was my home, for real. I fought to stay there so hard, but even after hiring lawyers, it just didn't work out for me. I then quickly pivoted, looking for other ways to return to Europe and started working towards a resident card for Portugal. Within hours of arriving in Lisbon, I met my closest friend, found an apartment in my dream neighborhood, and the landlord even offered to cut my deposit in half just because he said, "I really like your energy." It taught me that no amount of forcing can open doors that aren't meant for you, but the right doors will swing open effortlessly. Honestly, it could be easy to get away with never learning Portuguese in Lisbon. A lot of people speak English really well here, but I really wanted to feel a part of my city and not just as someone passing through. I remember about a year and a half into living in Portugal, I was desperately missing Spain. I missed the sense of community that I had there. And part of that community came from the fact that I was fluent in Spanish. So when I would walk down the street, the woman from the fruteria would wave at me and say, "Hey, Ambar, how's your family doing in Miami?" And I would go to the coffee shop, and when I would walk in, the woman would say, "Hey, Ambar, the usual?" I'd say, "Yeah, the usual." And she'd sit down and she asked me, "Tell me more about your family's home in the Dominican Republic." I felt like I was part of a community. And I thought, maybe that's what's missing for me in Portugal. So I decided that I was going to speak in Portuguese to everyone who spoke to me in Portuguese for as long as I could maintain the conversation. This did not go very well at first. I could not maintain the conversation very far, but little by little, as I continued to learn and practice and make a fool of myself, I got better and better. Fast forward, and I am now handling full ER visits in Portuguese, making groups of Portuguese women laugh over brunch, and having full conversations with my eyebrow lady about all sorts of things every time I see her. And this leads me to the final message of today's episode. You know, this would not be an episode of The Lighthouse Within without it. But today's is short and sweet. So if you are ready, please close your eyes and place your hand over your heart and take a deep breath with me. Let the air fill your lungs and bring you into this moment. Now, with your hand still over your heart, please receive this message. This year, when plans fall apart, when you're standing knee-deep in the middle of uncertainty, and the outcome looks bleak, and you don't know how you're going to make it out of this situation, I hope you remember that confidence doesn't come from knowing it all. Confidence doesn't come from having the perfect plan. Confidence, true confidence, comes from trusting yourself to figure things out as you go. And may you remember that within you have all the knowledge, all the strength, and all the resilience to make it through anything that comes your way this year. You can open your eyes now. If you liked this episode, please leave me a comment or send me a DM on Instagram. Also, remember to subscribe and follow the show so that you always know when new episodes drop. I am super excited for this upcoming series of conversations that we will be having. I polled followers on Threads and Instagram to see what roadblocks they hit in pursuit of their goals. Some of the things I heard from you all were overcommitting, self-doubt, and balancing goals with everyday life. So I'm super excited to talk about these topics over the coming weeks, so please stay tuned. And in the meantime, have a fabulous day.